Hello and welcome back to another episode of Off the Shelf Book Talk with Book Lovers. I'm Elizabeth Nelson here with Kay Johnson. And Kay, what have you been reading this time?
Well, I have been reading for several days A Dark and Stormy Night by Jean M. Dams, D-A-M-S.
Okay.
And it's a freebie through Kindle Unlimited. And it actually has everything I really like because it's English. It's a weekend country house murder. And it's a group of people who are sort of friends of friends. So not everyone knows everybody.
Okay.
So they're there, and it's a restored house from like 1400 or 1500. So they're really interested in the house and the rehabilitation of it and all that. So that's pretty interesting. But a storm hits, and rather than a blizzard, this is almost like a hurricane. And the whole, like the slate tile on the roof are blown off, and trees are uprooted, and the garden's trashed, and it's just bad. And it's flooding, too, because of the river. And anyway, when this big oak tree was pulled up, there's a skeleton in the roots. So that's body number one.
Okay. Number one.
And then there's the awful brother-in-law, body two. Then there's the dancer who's missing, body three. Then there's the body found in the priest's hole from 1960, four. And so the protagonist, Dorothy, her husband is a retired chief inspector.
Okay.
So he's sort of running this whole thing. And they've got a famous photographer there who is shooting the house for a book. So they've got him taking crime photos.
Okay.
So I'm 75% done, and they have now, the police have just arrived by helicopter. And they were trying to signal people with SOS with flares.
Okay.
So they finally got through, and so everybody's coming. So I am incredibly interested to see who really did it, or if there's like 4 different murderers. But it's actually pretty good, and it's really held my interest, and so we'll see what happens. So that is where I have been at a dark and stormy night. So what are you reading?
Well, I thought I was finishing a trilogy. It's called, the series is called The Inheritance Games, more than one. And they're by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, and the first one is called The Inheritance Games. The second one is The Hawthorne Legacy. The third one is the one I just finished is called The Final Gambit. But there's another one that's coming out that's called The Brothers Hawthorne. And so in this series, the main character's name is Avery Grahams, and she's just your normal kind of student. She lives with her sister because her mother passed away, her half-sister because her mother passed away, and her dad's just kind of we don't like the dad. He's not in the picture very often. And she's at school one day, and she gets brought down to the principal's office, and there's a guy there waiting for her that tells her that she has been mentioned in this really, like, the richest man in the world that lives in Texas will, and she needs to go with them to Texas for the reading of this will. And she's never heard of this guy, never met him, has no idea what's going on. So her and her sister hop on this plane, and they get there, and it's, of course, the gathering of the wealthy man's will. There's all his terrible children and his 4 grandsons.
Does he have an ex-wife or a...
His mother-in-law is still alive, but his wife is dead.
Okay.
And so they're reading the will, and when they read the will, they found out that Mr. Hawthorne, who's passed away, is leaving everything to Avery. He's written all of his family out of the will. He's given them each like a lump sum, and he's going to pay off their debts. And then she has to live in this mansion with the family for a year to be able to take over everything when she turns 18. So, and this house is like, so Tobias Hawthorne was a really rich man, obviously, but he really likes puzzles and games and riddles, and so he has a house that he has been constantly building onto. He's done all of his grandsons have been trained with like how to play games and win and stuff, and so this series follows a very convoluted game of them figuring out why everything was left to Avery and what else did Tobias have in plan. So they're really good. I guess you would say these are sort of YA books, but the first one it's trying to figure that out. The second one builds up. They all kind of build off of each other, and then the third one is how everything wraps up. And
So what's the fourth one?
the fourth one is going to be called The Brothers Hawthorne, and I haven't read too much into it yet, but it looks like that's going to be the four brothers that are in it. So it's Avery, and then there's Grayson, Nash, Jameson, and Xander are the four grandsons that we're going to inherit. And they're all different. Nash is sort of has more of like the country aesthetic. And he's one that anything sort of, like he could go out and come back and it looks like he's been in a fight and he'll have a puppy that he'll have just picked up somewhere. Or like if he finds someone, like a lot of people that work at the mansion where they all live have been people that he's kind of brought home with him that have needed help. Xander is like the mad scientist that's always building things. Grayson was the heir apparent until all this happened.
Until Avery.
Yep, and then Jameson is just sort of the loose cannon.
Okay.
So, and there's some love intrigue and all that fun stuff that plays into it. But it's a lot of, there's one part at the beginning of the third book where she's trying to locate all the hidden passageways in the house. And one of the brothers asks her about one she found recently. She goes, "Oh, the circular one in the library." And they just kind of look at her, and she goes, "You didn't know about the hidden staircase in the library. Now you do." But so it's kind of fun. It kind of reminded me of, there was a book when I was in middle school that was called The Westing Game, which is the same kind of thing. Wealthy, they're always wealthy benefactor dies.
Yeah, who wants a poor slumlord?
And I think it's like 5 or 6 people that live in an apartment building he owned or brought together to try to solve a mystery, and the winner gets to keep all the money. But I would never want to personally go out for any of those things because these people are kind of nuts and everybody's trying to kill them half the time.
Of
But
course.
I did really enjoy those. Like I said, I figured I was done, but now it's assuming I might not be, so, which happens.
That's true. That's true.
And it seems to be happening more and more lately with series. You're like, oh, this is going to be the last one. And then you're like, or not.
Or not. So now let's go to a before the series started book.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then
Yeah. We'll go back to the eventually you get the prequels.
Yes.
Or you get the people writing prequels without finishing the series. George R.R. Martin.
yes, and then you also get the ones that spin off standalones with the individual characters. So there's some,
You gotta keep it coming.
yeah. Well, I suppose they gotta, as we say in the news business, you have to feed the pig.
Yes. You have to feed the pig.
Well, I finished reading The Joy at Work. It's by Marie Kondo. And Marie Kondo, as everyone knows, is like the guru of organized homes. Well, she wrote a book about work. And I was somewhere, and I didn't have a book to read, so I downloaded Joy at Work, a sample, I think. And it really intrigued me because it starts out with this woman, a client of hers, who was so happy to go to work now because she'd walk into her perfect office, take her computer off the shelf, set it on her clean, pristine desk. She'd spray some air freshener so it smelled so good, and then she'd sit down and work, and it was just such an inviting atmosphere. And I thought, what a crock. Until, being I work at home, I'm forever trying to organize my workspace so it's better than it is.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, I never thought of putting my laptop on a shelf. And so I did. And I bought some air freshener at Target. And I cleaned my whole desk off and out. And I have to say that it is a lot better going to work.
Oh, good.
And so I thought, well, maybe she knows what she's talking about. So I started reading. I actually read the whole book. And it was really interesting because, high octane professionals are always too busy to like get organized because they know where everything is, so don't touch anything. And so you get the kind that have nothing on their desk, but their drawers are full of stuff. Or you get the kind that everything's on the desk.
Stackers.
Yeah. And so she often worked with professionals before work, which is interesting because they didn't want to take time away from their
I
workday
can see that.
and stuff. And so she, would give them an assignment and then come back, and it seemed to work. And so it was really fascinating to tie people's productivity to their organizational skills. And I have to say that I'm a productive person because I like working at home and I like working alone. But I'm more so now that I have my dad's roll-top desk where I work. And I had a drawer for me, a drawer for the leader, a drawer for my mom, a drawer for my uncle, and a drawer for the home association that I also do and the treasurer for. And it was just always such a mess. So I went to Target and bought small plastic boxes and was able to, I labeled them K, Mom, Norman, HOA, leader. And now everything's nice on my shelf in these nice boxes so that when I get mail, I can flip it in there. And then once a month when I pay things, I go through everything and it's really nice. And I told your mom that in the event something happened to me, just distribute the boxes. And so if you work at home or if you work in an office somewhere and you're looking for ways to be more productive, more organized, and just really spark that joy at work, I highly recommend Joy at Work by Marie Kondo. And I am amazed I'm saying this because I did not expect this book to be so, because I liked her first book, but I just couldn't see myself taking all my clothes and throwing them in the middle of the living room and then having to sort them.
Yeah.
Because I'd get like halfway and want to do something else. And then for months I'd have to pile, I'd have to stub over. So on that note, really, if you're looking for work inspiration, turn to Marie Kondo because she really has wonderful advice and I think you'll benefit from it.
Okay, good.
So what are you reading, kiddo?
I just want to point out the fact that you were somewhere without a book.
Yeah,
I have never heard of that happening before.
Well,
ever.
it actually, that isn't really true because I had my phone and I am guilty of having 2,913 books as of today on my Kindle
Oh my God.
app. However, I could find nothing I was interested in reading, which is really what I should say. I should clarify. And so I'm going through and, excuse me, nothing hit the spot. So that's how I discovered Marie Kondo. And I actually think I might have downloaded it from the library.
Okay.
Or maybe I read the sample from the library and then bought it.
Okay.
But again, I really highly recommend it.
Yeah.
So,
Good.
so now that I'm organized, what are you doing?
Well, I had could not read. I did not finish. Me, the completionist, put the book down and walked away.
Wow, what was it?
And actually, I think I'm in the minority on this one because it was the new Stephen King fairy tale.
Oh, yeah, we
His
talked
new
about
one.
that.
Yes, I remember reaching. People like it's got like 4.5, 5 stars on Goodreads, and everybody was raving about it. And I was like, "Ooh, parallel universe! This is like right up my alley." And I don't know if it was the teenage male protagonist, or if I'm just haven't read King for so long, I don't get his writing style anymore, or what it was. But I have a rule that I can't kick the book to the curb until I get to page 30. I have to at least
this
make
is
it to
really
page
bad.
30 or 35. And I remember, I think I texted you, and I was on like page 19, and I was like, man, I don't even know if I'm going to make it to that page 30. I sent it back. I just couldn't, I don't know, like, I'm a really big mood reader. Like, I can have a book come in from the library, or like I can buy a book and it'll just sit there for like 2 months until my brain is like, okay, we are mentally ready for this book. But I couldn't do it.
Well, you know, it's interesting. I think Stephen King is interesting because I've read his early books, you know, Salem's Lot, The Shining, Pet Cemetery, all those early ones, The Stand.
Christine.
Yeah, those early ones. And then he seemed to be so prolific that I really couldn't keep up. You know, there were just too many books, and I couldn't keep track of which was which, and this and that, and some of them are really dark. I mean, the guy is twisted.
Well, I remember I can't remember what TV show it was on, but somebody they were making fun of Stephen King because some of his newer books have gotten a little out there with some of their stuff, and they were spoofing a conversation with Stephen King and his publisher. And the publisher's like, okay, King, let's hear about this new book. And he just kind of goes, you see, it's the bad guy. And he's literally looks around the room and he goes, a lamp monster. And starts going off. And it's just like, you know, sometimes it feels that way. You kind of look at a book and you're like, really? This is the bad guy? Or it's, you know, I think it was the Mist. Or different things like that. He did one of those, and it's something in the fog, and it's not what you think it is. And there's a lot of those.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah, but they sacrifice somebody's son to
They're
the
always
fog.
Sacrificing somebody in his books. But I really wanted to try it because so many people said it was really good, and even my mother-in-law told me it was really good, and I couldn't do it. And I tried, like, I was like, well, maybe if I read it before I go to bed, or like if I read it during different times of day. No, I couldn't do it. And I don't know if too, like, I'd had several books that were all kind of that thriller genre. And so I don't know if maybe I just reached my limit on depressing.
That could be.
This book starts out with the mother getting hit by a car. And dying, and so there's not really happy right away at that too. And you don't really go to Stephen King for happy to begin with. But I couldn't do it, and I feel like I think I'm in the minority. Like, a lot of people really like it, but I'm just past my King era.
I am one of the few who didn't like Crawdads, Where the Crawdads Sing.
I didn't like it either. We're on the same page. I did not like Where the Crawdads Sing. I have not been able to say it out loud because I started to voice it, and Nana looked like she was going to kill me for saying I didn't like the book, so I just kept it inside.
It's funny, a friend of mine had put on Facebook that she got the most recent Louise Penny book, The Room of Curiosities, or
I'd have to look
something
it up,
like that. And anyway, she and another gal were talking on Facebook about different books, and this friend of hers did not like Louise Penny books. And we're sort of like, how is that even possible? Okay, fine. But then she proceeded to say that she wasn't a fan of the Crawdads either. And of course, I jumped in then and said, I wasn't either. And someone else recently admitted they didn't like it. I think there's a whole bunch of us out there, but
I think when it comes to any book that's on, like, whether it's Reese Witherspoon, Oprah,
I usually avoid
Jenna
all
Bush
those
has it.
books.
A lot of them, I feel like they don't so much go to, like, a book for, like, it's funny, it's an enjoyment, it's a book that you have to feel something, or you have to, like,
pain.
It has to something. I don't know, but
Pain.
Because I read The Crawdads because Becca had read it and Nana read it and both really liked it. And I don't think Jill read it because I don't think that strikes me as a book that's not Jill's genre. But they both really liked it, and other people had said really great things about it. And I remember starting reading it and being like, okay, maybe I have to get like halfway through it before you start liking it.
Oh, I
and then you got to halfway through.
Thing.
I got halfway through, and then I was like, okay. got to 3/4 of the way through, and I was like still waiting for this grab ya, love it book moment, and I just never came.
I don't like books that force me to like confront ugly things.
Well, I feel like it's trying to be kind of like those, back when like Gone with the Wind and those, you had these big epic novels where it was like, or the ones where it went through like a family dynasty where it's like the grandparents into the parents and the kids, and hey, let's talk about the grandkids. But like nothing really happened during that time. It's just the family life.
Right.
It's kind of what I think that was trying to do, to show like everything that could change through her life. But I just couldn't. I could not do Crawdad. I could not do it. It was a struggle to finish.
I didn't even finish it.
I finished it because, again,
The completionist.
my name is Elizabeth and I have a completion problem. I have to do it. But yeah, the other ones that I like is, you're reading a book and you get to like, you're reading through it and everything's wrapping up really nice, and then you realize you have like 100 pages left of the book and you're like, things are going to go so bad for these characters. Two things are going to happen. It's going to go bad, and there's going to be a second book when you get to that point.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, you can see, you read it on the wall.
Yes, and it's always going to come. But what else have you been reading?
Well, I am reading The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich by William Scheer.
Sorry, that just kind of came out of nowhere. I don't mean to laugh at the Third Reich, but that just kind of came out of nowhere.
Well,
But yeah, I get
it was free on Kindle Unlimited, which is always a factor in my reading.
It is.
And then the Second World War is an interest of mine, and William Scheer was known as one of Murrow's boys, and he was one of 11 reporters who were sent across Europe and reported on World War II.
Okay.
And he was sent to Nazi Germany. And so he has that claim to fame, plus the fact that he was there and was an eyewitness to the rise and the fall of the Third Reich. And it's particularly fitting now, I think, because there's been so much right-wing activity. And with the January 11th committee and the attempt to overthrow the government. And so it's interesting to read this because you can see how people are seduced by power. And the thing with Nazi Germany is when World War I ended, they signed the Treaty of Versailles. And France and England really put the screws to Germany. And not that they didn't deserve it, but they did it. And as a result, there was massive unemployment, massive inflation, and things were bad. And that set the tone for someone like Adolf Hitler to step up and say, you deserve better, we can do better, et cetera, and people voted him in. And that's not unlike things we've seen where people talk a good line, and if you're unemployed or facing bad times and someone promises better days ahead, I can see where you would be influenced to buy into that hope. And so The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich is a particularly, I think, timely book, even though it was written years ago. But it's also an interesting book from a historical standpoint because it's an important part of history. And I just wrote an article recently on Pearl Harbor because it falls on a Wednesday, which is the day we publish. And the cost of World War II was $4 trillion in today's dollars. And over 400,000 Americans died from service-related, being in a battle, or service-related injuries, although they may not have been incurred, or disease, all those things. But that's 400,000 people. That's a lot of people. And so I think we need to, they say if you don't
Learn from the past, you're doomed to repeat it.
Yeah, and I definitely encourage people to read it to know, because we don't want to repeat this. We should learn from yesterday and do better,
Yep.
is my thought.
And that's the closing thought for this week's
Oh,
show.
do better,
Yes,
folks.
do better, folks. And on that note, so we're going to end, and we'll see you next time. If you want to reach out to us, we're on Facebook or our email at offthe-shelfbooktalk@gmail.com, and we'll see you next time.